All right, so I came across your profile and you had this mission of helping people get unstuck. So when I reached out to you, the response that you gave me was one that, not only resonated with me, but when I pictured having the conversation face to face, it was like very, what's the word for it? Enthusiastic and motivating and inspiring. So I want to dive right into the idea of that question, which is when you feel like you're stuck in life, how do you get yourself unstuck?
Oh, well, thank you. I think we all need awareness. We need to see what got us there. And so a lot of times we just react, right? And so there's always an internal dialogue going on in our mind. And I kind of think of it like the little angel on my shoulder and the little demon on the other. And it's like there's two opposing forces in my mind that a lot of times run havoc because they don't actually, they're opposites. And so they're working against each other. And so, how do I know who to listen to, right? Especially when emotions are involved, right? Because emotions, if we don't manage them, can manage us. And so I always think I first have to be aware of who is talking in my mind, who's telling me I'm stuck, or who's identifying and being aware of what the thoughts are, what thoughts are feeding the response, or what thoughts are feeding my feelings or behaviors, because those two things will have a direct effect on the results you're having in life. So if the result is I'm stuck, we just have to rewind, reflect and have this awareness on, okay, how did I get here? Where did the ball roll? Where did this ball come from? Let's rewind back and see where it started from, because it always comes from a thought. And usually it's a negative self-talk. And even if I can just stop in that moment and ask myself, is this negative or positive? Most of the time, if it's negative, it's a lie, because our brain is lying to us most of the time to protect us. And so the neuroscience behind our brains is that it wants to keep us the same. Our brain's primary job is to keep us the same because it thinks keeping us the same will keep us safe. But I got news for you, and I think you know this, Mike, because even sharing with me before we got started here, life is full of surprises, and we don't always react to those surprises in the way we want to, right? And it's because of the way we look at life. It's the way we think about life. And so there's these opposing forces that are always um working against each other. So if we aren't aware of, okay, what side is talking and what side do I want to listen to? Do I want to be I always think there's like two ways of looking at something. I can either be afraid or I can have hope. It's like fear or faith, or my way or a divine way. You know, um, that's what I was thinking when you said that.
To me, I think it built along my experience this understanding that there's a phrase by Epictetus about testing the thoughts, putting them up for review at the end of the day. And when we get in those positions, which we all experience, no matter how far along in that journey we are, we always come to those stagnant points. And if you look back at the steps you've taken, along with where you're currently at, and you put each one of those paces up for review, it kind of feels at times like it unlocks a new puzzle piece that you can put on the board, and ultimately, it kind of propels you to take that next step. And like you mentioned about how life throws surprises at you, it seems like, because I've discovered, there's really nothing that life throws at you that you're not prepared for in one way or another. And when you face these different things, you're inevitably taking the axe and you're kind of shaping that next piece that you're going to lay down, and you strengthen yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. You know that phrase that says, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger?
Exactly.
You know, life is about experiences, and I think our brain automatically tries to categorize it into this is good or this is bad. So when I get some stimulus, when I have something in the moment, my brain is on that fight or flight. It has this like reaction to categorize, is this good or is this bad? And it wants to just, it's one or the other. But I think most of us know that it's not really black and white. Most things in life are not black and white. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have to be simple, right? Because we can simplify things so that we have more clarity, and we always have choices. But I think sometimes it doesn't have to always be good or bad and black or white. There's a lot in between black and white. There could be a lot of different choices in there. There could be a lot of shades of gray. And so a lot of times when our brain has to react so quickly, of it has to be like this or it has to be like that, it's because it doesn't have enough information. So the brain will fill in the blank. If I think something, um if I have a surprise or something, I get some information and it's like, wow, I don't even know how I feel about this. Your brain fills in the blanks. It's just the natural way the brain is programmed. And so we have to realize we do have control over our thoughts, but we have to actually practice this. It's a skill. So, um, in the moment, when we're just responding or reacting, that doesn't feel like I can control anything or manage anything. And that's why, there's this great tool that I like teaching my clients, and it's called gratitude pose. And I like using body language to train the brain how to react in situations that baffle me, or situations I don't know how to handle, or I'm not sure about, or I have those conflicting thoughts about. And, you know, body language tells our brain how to look at things. If I smile, my brain releases hormones, and it it releases serotonin. It releases natural happy hormones into the bloodstream. And even if I'm not happy, just by smiling can actually change my mood. And so when we use things like a gratitude pose or a power pose, or um, these ways to hold our body, a body language, it tells our brain how to feel, how to act, how to do. And that can be powerful in those moments where you feel anxious, or you feel afraid, or you feel nervous. There's actually been studies about even test anxiety. Before taking a test, um, to use some body language, like body language as in getting big. Like a power pose would be like taking up space, putting your arms up in the air, putting your arms on your hips. When you think of people that win, when you win a race or you go across the finish line, everybody puts their arms up like this, um, win a touchdown, coming up to the Super Bowl and everything. It's like, what do those guys do? They do their like happy dance. You know what I mean? They like
Right.
they're using body language to be like, "Oh yeah, I got this." And so the theory behind this is that you do that before you go into an anxious or anxiety provoking situation to give your brain the message that I'm confident, I got this, I'm happy. And you don't have to do it in front of anyone. They were talking about telling people to go to the bathroom beforehand and just do it in the stall, so no one has to see you doing this. But you're using that energy to kind of prime your brain for what's happening in front of you.
See, I love the ideas there, the principles behind it. That's a lot of what I do when someone comes to me and they first start these outdoor journeys. And, deep down inside, they're kind of scared of the idea of going out on these long hikes or these long backpacking, camping adventures because, what if I forgot something? Or what if, this happens and whatnot. It's not about picking up the backpack and going on a 15-mile hike, out for 7, 8 days at a time when you first get started. It's about building that confidence and starting small. And as you start to get out and you start to do these things, then you add the next tool of the trade. You've got your backpack at the beginning. You walk around maybe around the block or a park and it's empty. And then you go out into, say, a park and you go down one of these hiking trails. You add a walking stick in order to help you get through. And the same thing goes for a lot of different phases in life where we get to a situation and it feels too big, so we end up just kind of sitting down and we stay stagnant. But if you take that big picture and you look at little wins that you can find, little momentum builders, you're able to ultimately start to tackle that big picture.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like 1% changes.
Right.
There've been a lot of great books about that and statistics and research on, you know, a 1% change can get you going in a different direction. And it doesn't seem like it at the beginning, but that consistency, like you were talking about, building these routines so that you're doing something over and over. And a lot of my coaching business is all about neuroplasticity, where you're training the brain to look at things and do things differently. And it actually starts becoming automatic because repetition is what actually changes the way we look at things. And so I don't know about you, but you know having an AM and PM routine is kind of using that rule of, I start my day this way and I end my day this way. And it could be something so small, but it gets the mind prepared for consistency, repetition, and just and that structure has been so key for me in being able to get my direction, right? Because sometimes when we're stuck, going back to feeling stuck and not and unlocking the power that's like inside of you, having that structure of the repetition helps your brain feel safe. And so it's like creating this routine um, is like a mind gym. It's like a brain gym. Instead of going uh, to the gym to lift weights, you're flexing the muscles in your brain to build new neural pathways, new um, synapses inside your brain that are going to work for you and give you more clarity, and show up for you in those times when you do feel stuck. And if you feel stuck, because everyone's going to have good and bad days, that's just life. Like, no one gets out of this life without feeling pain, without feeling surprised, without feeling hardship and challenge. And, we're all going to lose somebody. We're all going to get fired from a job, most of us anyway. But even if it's not fired, like, you're going to get let go, or you're going to be in financial difficulty, or you're not going to like your job and you're going to quit. So it's like, it doesn't have to match exactly, but the point I'm trying to make is that we get to learn through these experiences. And I really believe, and I'm sure you really get that out in the wilderness, that it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go.
Well, definitely. You can only prepare so much. You can only read the latest tips and tricks and accumulate so much gear before you actually have to go and put boots on the ground. And in that process, a lot of the time I equate it to the analogy of walking through a rainstorm with an umbrella. You know, you stay dry, you're safe, you're comfortable. And at some point, though, that umbrella breaks down. So ultimately, you have to take your first steps into a rainstorm without it. And yeah, it's difficult sometimes to get wet. However, you're still achieving something. You're actually pushing yourself forward to learn how to adapt to that situation. And, you're building a skill. You're building trust within yourself. It's a lot of that same mental dojo training type stuff going on. You're rewiring something and you're strengthening other things.
Yeah, that is so true. I think of a lot of these um, mindful tools have a lot to do with um, you know learning from the past so that we have choices about the future. And I think um, everything is a skill. Happiness is a skill. Forgiveness is a skill, which means that every time you do it, every time you practice being happy, every time you practice going on a hike and, climbing up a mountain, you get stronger and you get better. And the more you practice, the better you get. And I think of even an Olympian, right? They practice so much, they become masters. And so I think it's a good news. It's good news that we can look at forgiveness as a skill. We can look at being happy as a skill is good news, because that means when we learn about it and we practice it, the more I practice, I could actually master being happy. To me, it's a it's a choice, but I have to practice at it to get better at it, is what I've found anyway. And and that's the reason why I wrote a book called Happy, Joyous, and Free. Love your life no matter what, because it doesn't matter if you're down in the dumps. It doesn't matter if you're surprised about life events, if you're shocked by someone else's behavior. Um, we can learn how to see things with a new pair of glasses, a new lens, a new perspective, and we really can find joy and happiness and freedom, even if we don't like it.
It's funny because I can tell you and I can attest to the fact that I've experienced a lot of things over the years that I haven't liked, but I've gained something out of it. And you keep making an important point in the fact that all of these outcomes or, you know, actions that we make, they're indeed based off a decision. You know, it's a choice how we respond to the feelings that we experience, the situations and the environments that we're in. Still, ultimately, where we go from that moment, that stimulus, is our decision. You know, a lot of the time we find ourselves in the midst of a day saying, you know, so and so is making me so mad. And really, it's not them that's actually making you mad. Yeah, they're providing an opportunity for you to make a decision, but it's you that's responding to that stimulus. And, you know, you make another interesting point that I can tie into with the idea of, you know, progression. And really, I think that even though we tell ourselves we're stuck just in the mundane, you know, everything's the same, it's not really true, because ultimately there's still a force of energy that's going around in a circle. And that circle is us individually and uniquely. Now, things may not come as quickly as we hope to see them, but we're still making progress because that energy still goes in that circle and there's still constant motion, regardless of if you see it or not.
That's so true. And when I think of all the times, you know, the last 10 years that I've been a coach and helped other people and studied and researched and read and have done my own work and my own practicing, I had this experience, which I'm sure you're just going to laugh at me, Mike, because um, I was in the car as a passenger and I looked down and I saw this creepy spider crawling on my leg. And I have had a phobia of spiders. And probably the hardest thing for me to be going out in the wilderness with you would be my fear of spiders, right? So here I am in this little car, and this spider is actually crawling on me. And I took my hand and I smacked my leg, right? And of course, I miss. The spider jumps off me, right? And I'm in this car and there's nowhere for me to go. So I don't know where the spider has gone, right? And I know it sounds so silly, but I was like, I almost had like a panic attack because I'm afraid of this spider. And I was like, Melanie, come on. Like, there's one part of me that wants to tell my husband, pull over so we can find this spider because I'm not going anywhere in this car until I know it's dead. And then there's this other part of me that's like, this spider is this little and you're like 100 times bigger than it, you know? And I'll tell you, because I have this awareness of when I'm afraid to take a look at it. So here I am, a real phobia of spiders, and one's crawling on me, and it's still alive in the car. I can't get away from it. And I started asking myself questions like, what are you really afraid of? Are you afraid the spider is going to kill you? You know, and in my mind, when I ask these questions, I'm getting real honest answers. And my brain, whether it's true or not, is saying, yes, I think that this spider is going to bite me and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to die from it. And it's like, okay, now logically, is that really going to happen? And I just kept asking myself questions, and I uncovered more and more truth about spiders. And it actually, by the end of it, I'm not going to keep going on about it, but by the end of it, I was able, just by question patterning, just by asking questions, is it really true? Is that really true? Is that really true? I got to the point where it's like, you know, what could be more true? That the spider is afraid of me. That it was a very small risk that I could die from a spider bite, or even have to go to the hospital for a spider bite. And and then I started, then I could just, then once I could calm all that fear down, I was able to ask myself, well, what's something you could like about spiders? Like maybe we could be curious about what spiders do that benefit the world. Like God created us and all these creatures, he created spiders for a reason, you know, um, why are spiders here? Like, if I could just get curious, my mind's able to open up. Because, when our mind is closed, and I think I know that spiders are ugly and creepy and yucky, if I'm able to open my mind, I was able to see, well, um, spiders kill other bugs that I don't like. So I was able to start using my mind because I was open. I was willing to be open to something, some other truth about spiders. And that spider could still be in that car, and I did not have to tear that car apart trying to find it to make sure it was dead. And so I'm sharing this because it's progress for a girl like me. Like,
No,
and
honestly, that is a beautiful story, and I'm glad that you shared that because that ties into so much that I do. And that original question you asked yourself, was that spider there to kill you? I want to add to that and rephrase it. Was that spider there to kill you, or was it there to teach you?
I love
Because
that.
as I've discovered along my journey, when we bring ourselves down from kind of like the pedestal that we say that we hold ourselves on, as far as everything else on earth, we're the superior form of being, and we bring ourselves to a level where we're equal with every creation on earth, we can learn so much that broadens the vocabulary that we tell ourselves. And a lot of these hang-ups and these you know moments of feeling stuck, they come out of that negative self-talk. Well, if you look at that spider, and yes, you're a billion times bigger than it, and it's more afraid of you than you are of it, you can look at the behavior and the way that it's interacting with the environment around it. You know, inside of a car on top of a human being isn't its natural surroundings. However, he's not sitting there spinning the story in his head that you're spinning in yours. He's still got to live in the moment. And whether that very next moment comes with you smashing him on your leg, or he jumps off and runs underneath the floor mat, either way, whatever happens is going to be chance. That's happenstance. He can't do anything about it. So he's going to live in the moment and experience it to the best of his, eight-legged little ability. And that, I think, is one of the greatest principles that anything on earth can teach us.
Absolutely. I love that question. Is it there to teach you? And when I think of any fear in your life, because then I started realizing this spider represents all the things that I'm afraid of. Like it could be anything, like afraid your husband's going to leave you, afraid your husband's going to cheat on you, afraid um, of getting cancer, afraid, there's, afraid your kid is going to get sick. Like there's so many different fears or worries or stuff that just isn't even true, that we waste time worrying about. And we do think, well, if that happened, I'll just die from it, or it's going to kill me. And the truth is it there to kill you, or is it there to teach you? I love that. That's just going to be like in my little side pocket now, because that's another great question, because that's how you actually get to the conscious mind. because our conscious mind is in that moment, but our subconscious is what is always kind of making decisions for us. And so to get to that conscious mind, I have to use logic. So one of the great tools is to ask your mind, your brain, yourself questions to pull the logic out of it. So I absolutely love that. That is a great question.
And that's why I encourage people when they go out to practice that art of tree bathing. Is kind of woo woo as that sounds and whatnot. You can learn and gain so much expansion and understanding just by sitting with your back up against a tree. If you think about that spider being, say, a deer that just happens to walk into your backyard, you're not going to be afraid of it. You're going to stand there kind of in awe and enjoy the moment, that connection. So why take whatever that animal may be and spin that story that we tell ourselves? Because every situation that we walk through in this world, we suffer more in our own heads than what we're actually going to experience. You know, being the fact that we have that ability to spin stories and create all these different things, we tend to use that more in a, what's the term for it, a self-suffering kind of way. We always like to fear the unknown. We like to fear the outcome that we can't control or the thing that we can't hold in our hand. And a lot of that gets back to that idea that we originally started with. When we're feeling stuck, it's because we don't feel like we have control. We can't spin that wagon wheel. We can't push ourselves out of the mud nearly as fast as we would like to. And that just kind of gets you frustrated and you throw your hands up in the air, you sit down and you just say whatever and let the world pass by. And a lot of this stuff for me started like with a really narrow type vision where I got exposed to Stoic philosophy. And as I dove deeper and deeper into that school, it's really where all these sort of basic ideas became kind of highlighted for me. And then when I started tying it into how I interact in the wilderness on these different adventures that I do, I started to see more and more of the connection in the spiritual aspect of things, that we're all here for a reason. We've all got this mission and we've got this unique set of skills that we carry. But when you get caught up in those moments of being stuck, that's when you have to dive in and you have to find these things, because it's there, but there's no push button. There's no rope to just pull it all out. You've actually got to do the work and really live the experience and live the story that you're here to write.
That's right. I like what you said about that everybody has a mission and a purpose. And if you are stuck, I would say the best thing to do is to set a goal, because goals give our brain direction, and it needs direction. When you're stuck, it means you're lost. It means you don't know where to go. And so I tell my clients the quickest way to get unstuck is to set a goal. And it can be a small goal, it can be a big goal, but it gives our brain direction. So that's probably the quickest thing you can do for yourself if you're feeling stuck.
I love what you said in there about when we're lost because when we're stuck, it's because we're lost. In the beginning of the podcast, the little song that plays, I stole that quote from Daniel Boone. And the actual full quote goes, God never created a man of any stature to be lost. Sure, you get turned around in the woods for a couple of days, but you always find your way back. And if you think about Daniel Boone and the life that he led, you know, the adventures that he had that we really romanticize nowadays and pass down from generation to generation, and you take that for an example, you know, if he had sat in the woods one day and just said, I'm lost, can you imagine how different things would be now?
Never give up. That's all I got to say. I think a lot of us give up too easily. And it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be lost. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to ask for help. A lot of us, it, these are all things that we might have negative self-talk going on in our mind that keep us stuck from asking help, or feeling like there's no use, or there's no way out, or this is just the way it's going to be, and we kind of start, well, we lose hope, and we stop trying. um and that only makes things worse. It really does. It doesn't, there's no solution there. So it's just like, if you're lost in the woods, you need help, you need a GPS, you need a map, you need a compass, you need something to point you in the right direction. And so even if the goal is I'm going to get out of bed today because I've been so depressed and I'm stuck in bed and I don't want to do anything, it's like, okay, give yourself a goal of what time you're going to get out of bed tomorrow, because that at least is giving your brain a direction, and we have to look at the things we are doing well. I think, I don't know about you, but I can get so hard on myself and just want to um, beat myself up for not being better than I am right now and today. I want to be farther along up the hill, or I want to be farther along in my journey than I actually am, instead of just being here right now. And so I liked what you said about the spider. The spider is just, he's here right now. Like, woo, that was good. I missed her hand and I was able to jump away. So now where am I going to go? It's like, it's all in, I would think the spider's all in that moment, where, um, we get stuck in the past or the future, and it's, you know, um, I really think, we can miss the most beautiful things right here, right now. Like you said, with the deer, I might miss that because I'm busy looking over there, or in the future, or in the past, and I don't see this magnificent sight right here, right now.
And that's very well said. I mean, you know, when I think about how I spend the bulk of the fall and, you know, a good chunk of the winter staring through a set of binoculars, just observing, you gain so much. And it really, I think it really defines the canvas. You know, it puts that base layer on it. And when you start spinning your wheels and you sit down, you kind of lose sight of the principle. You lose sight of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And when you're sitting there on that stump, if you tap into a little bit of gratitude for what's truly around you, it provides another motivating factor.
I love that.
I remember one year for me where I was sitting out in the woods for days on like a 6 or 7 day hunt. And this was probably about day 6 and I hadn't seen anything. Just sitting on, you know, ravine after ravine or hilltop after hilltop. And there was nothing. And then finding this tree stump off in the distance, Sitting on that tree stump was a sandhill crane, and he just sat there. And I just sat and stared at him through my binoculars for at least a good hour or two, just mesmerized and enjoying that connection. And as I walked back to the truck on what ended up being an unsuccessful hunt, it was really fulfilling. It was really satisfying that I got to watch this magnificent bird, not necessarily up close enough to touch him, but, close enough to have that connection. And the gratitude and the joy that I felt for that as I returned back home really reminded me why it is that I get out into the field and why I do these activities, let alone it inspired me enough to continue my own personal journey.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely a great example of being in the moment and looking for uh, what the day was teaching you, you know?
Right. So, as we come toward the end of our time, I've got this question that I love to smack everybody with at the very end of the conversation. Now that you're all good and warmed up, from your experience and your journey, along with your time spent with that spider, you've got to share some words of inspiration and a motivational story that's going to help everybody get unstuck.
Absolutely. I mean, I have so many. It's like where to start. I think don't be afraid to make a mistake. I think a lot of times I have been afraid to even start something because I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want someone to think, I'm a failure or um, have a bad opinion of me. And so um, I would rather play small uh, or, to stay safe, so to speak. But I'll tell you, going through divorce and dating and finding my soulmate and be remarried, um, you know, I had to put myself out there and believe big. Um, so I ended up for the first time uh, waiting to kiss my husband for 3 months. We didn't. So when we met, we decided we would get to know each other before we got physical, and it was, to me, that was a way to try something different. It was a way to um, believe in something that uh, I wanted to get married to someone. I wanted a partner, and we did that, and we got to know each other. And I know probably no one does this anymore, but we actually waited to have sex till we got married. And that was something I didn't even think I could do. And, um, when I started out with this new way of looking at dating and getting married and how I was going to act in a relationship, I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it, you know. Um, and yet the results from that were were wonderful. I mean, I really chose my husband um, because he's my best friend. Like, we know how to talk, we know how to have fun together without yeah, with it doesn't I mean, just making that choice to really choose someone and not know how it's going to be, you know, um was scary. And yet, um, I chose faith. I chose hope. I chose um, a different way of doing something to get a different result. And so I guess like the moral of the story for me, I'm not telling that's for everybody, but there's an analogy here of doing something different to get something different, you know? And it really did get me something extremely different. And I had to do something extremely different. So sometimes when you're stuck, you have to change it up. You got to change it up. And so don't be afraid to go big. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to try something new to get something new and wonderful and amazing and worth it.
See, I think a lot of those decisions and those movements ended up coming out of the idea of really defining a value for yourself internally, that you can trust yourself to move into those different off the beaten path kind of avenues. And you're right, when you get stuck or you're finding yourself repeating the same patterns, wherever it is you find yourself in reality, in your reality, don't be afraid to step outside of the box. You know, this is really a game a lot of the time of survival, where you achieve food, fire, and shelter. Once you've got, and water, once you got the necessities, then you can have that space to be creative and to find those beaten paths in order to improve the situation. So when you're feeling stuck, that's really what it's about, is looking outside the box, finding your own personal path off the beaten trail.
Thank you. This was a wonderful talk. I'm so grateful I got to talk with you today.
I really enjoyed this. I'm really glad. Like I said, I really got excited when with the response that you sent me. So I had to make this one happen. I'm glad we got to do this tonight.
Me too, Mike. Thank you.
Now, before I let you go, though, you got to let people know where they can get in touch with you or find out about your work, your book, all that good stuff.
Thank you. Yes. So my book is on Amazon. It's Happy, Joyous, and Free. Love your life no matter what. Again, my name is Melanie Yates. You can also find me at happyjoyousandfree.org. That's my website. I would love to hear from you guys. You can get a free consult on for coaching if you'd like to share where you're at. I promise that even with the consult, you'll get something from me. You'll get some kind of tool or direction to put your mind in a better place than you are currently. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. So I also wanted to give your listeners a free gift, and that is on coachmelaniefreegift.com. So you'll get a free video series on that to help you set goals. And how to visualize them and how to use body language and vision boards and stuff like that to really just give you some tools to create that map or that GPS to where you're going.
Awesome. I'll link to that in the show notes. So shoot me that in an email and we'll get that all set up too. So we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again.